Back in 1992, I developed a graphical SQL client on Macintosh for Cybes RDBMS, at a time when only command line tools were provided to access the server, and we were editing our SQL code on Sonos with VI. It was before Toad or Rapid SQL existed, at a time when Microsoft SQL Server did not come with Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. This tool was called DbDK, for Database Development Kit, and was fancy enough to be adopted by my peer developers and the different organizations I worked with at the time. So when Java became available, with JDBC access to many database systems, I naturally ported this Mac-only development and Cybes-only client to make it universal. This was called DbJ for Database Java Tool. Soon other tools became popular, like SquirrelDB in 2001, then dbeaver in 2010, but I kept DbJ code up and running to fit my personal, specific requirements, like multiple databases, automated execution, templating of stored procedures, development, automatic character sets, conversions of result sets, or schema versions comparisons. It is also and foremost a hobby, following the trend of considering programming as a creative art form with constraints. This summer I popped up the code back in Eclipse to cover for something where I do not find a good ready-made solution. You may have heard about synthetic data recently, since it has become an increasingly way to train machine learning models in a faster and cheaper way than acquiring existing, real data. However, beyond this use case, generating realistic but fake data is frequently required in IT to support development and test lifecycle, without raising privacy and confidentiality challenges, or when you just cannot collect real data yet. Sometimes this data shall help to test cases that are not naturally common, so not focusing on authenticity but more to extensively validate the potential situations you will face, to ensure resiliency and robustness of your application. Such functionality does not require highly advanced algorithms, so I included data generation capability in DbJ, this Java-based database access tool I built over 20 years ago, to generate rapidly and easily data for any of the data platforms that you can access with JDBC, traditional ones like SQL Server and MySQL, but also advanced ones like Snowflake, Redshift, or Databricks. Let's look at one of our table's metadata, the consumers table. Based on this metadata, only leveraging the data types and constraints, we can already automatically build up some data to feed the table. We can see that data generated would be full garbage, because metadata is commonly not very specific. For instance, we have many varchars of 200 characters max, so we see many rows built up with big texts of lorem ipsum like Latin data. When we have shorter fields, we can assume that data is more about codes, so by default, uppercase is used with no spaces, and some longer ones are supposed to be short descriptions. Dates, numerics, are full random values. When we compare this to effective significant content, well, indeed it's still kind of far from realistic. So the second approach is to guide the tool, with additional metadata, to explain a bit more the type of content expected. For this consumer ID, I know that we don't expect a lengthy text, but a UUID uppercase with dash. For the last name, I can select from a set of values with capital letter. And even if column is nullable, I will decide to always fulfill it. Same thing for first name. I will then build my own list of titles with a few empty. I know emails patterns are very standard, so can get it generated easily. And it will be systematically filled. This due date will be a random one, but I will pick up dates only in the future. I know I have a good algorithm to generate international addresses or specialize them US, UK, or French addresses. And I will not include the city since we have a separate field for this. Address 2 and address 3 will be kept completely empty. As you can see the description changing when I update these details. For the zip code, and for the sake of demonstration, let's use a mask, starting with 2 uppercase letters, followed by 5 digits. The tool proposes a good reference list of real cities, so let's use this one. And let's use a generating algorithm to build up phone numbers that fit a variety of international formats. I could of course have used the mask-based generator if the format is very standardized. For the remaining ones, I will use sets of constants. A set of some locales. You can, by the way, see that by repeating the same value multiple times, distribution will not be linear. I can therefore influence the number of some specific values. This is a technique I will also apply to the isDeleted flag, since I want much more active records than deleted ones. The timestamp will be picked up from some recent dates and times. And again, I will select some constants representing countries' ISO codes. Now, I am kind of happy with this configuration, so I will save it, so I can reuse it later on to generate different datasets. Let's look at a sample of the rows it would generate. Wow, much better now. The sample rows dialog shows 1000 rows to give an idea of how your dataset will look like. I can see that UUID, fully unique of course, that the names are always fulfilled even if the table would allow for nulls, etc. The emails are all unique. We have some repetition in the dates, and postal addresses or phone numbers look really realistic. Now that I am happy with the configuration prepared, I can effectively generate data, not processing them in memory if I want to deal with millions of rows. Let's say that 100,000 rows is what I want. You now have different options. You can directly insert this data in the table I configured by sending the SQL commands to the server. For this, you can optionally truncate table first to get rid of all existing data, but you may just want to add new rows. You can also commit execution periodically to not keep too long uncommitted changes to the database. You may want to execute this command on a different database and schema, a different environment for instance. We will see later why this can be important. And maybe, you do not have privileges to alter data in the database yourself, and just want to build up a script or a data file that you can hand over to someone that will insert data for you. This can be done by either producing a CSV file, a JSON file, or preparing a SQL script for someone to use. Let's use the CSV file generation option for our 100,000 rows. This is quite a small file, and we will use the pipe as separator of columns. This file was instantly generated. Let's look at its content. Let's redo the same, and now use a SQL script generation. Of course, each time you generate data, completely different datasets will get built. Let's look at the content of the SQL file now. So this second technique of generating data was nice, but I will now show a third one. Let's close the table dialog and restart again. Going through this configuration and details for each column did take time. So if we have existing data in the table, we can request DbJ to automatically profile this existing data to produce very similar data, instead of manually explaining what is our expected content. For instance, here I am connected to a production environment, so let's look at the data effectively contained in this table. Now, if I move to the Synthetic Data tab, I can request the tool to profile this existing data. Let's check the basic creation defined. Yes, we know it's garbage. Let's profile data now. Okay, took a few seconds. Looks like the definitions have changed. And now let's look at the data produced. Well, much better. UUIDs were detected, email addresses, lists of small datasets. Okay, it still did generate some very dummy names and first names to ensure good variability of data. But overall, in a few seconds, that is something we could use. Of course, you can mix the different methods by just profiling a few columns, or profiling all of them then adjusting one or two. This is what we will do for the last names and first names here. Et voila, much nicer. Last comment on data profiling. You can see that you can select a precision percentage. This will allow you to enforce full alignment of data to the existing dataset, or to allow for some deviation, so the data you generate will fit a specific percentage of existing rows. So you allow for some outliers in your dataset. Let's use this new configuration to generate data. Of course, since this is based on profiling, you can think that we already need data, but this is exactly where the other connection function gets handy. You can connect to production profile data that is already available to you, and then use this to generate dummy data for the development or QA environments. And this will take you only a few seconds, without ever connecting the two environments together, just based on your own privileges of accessing those. Last but not least, most of the time you do not create tables individually, but have to respect referential integrity. That is, if you generate a table A with primary keys, you want to make sure that table B, referencing this table, will generate foreign keys of the exact same data set. This is where the reference feature comes handy. First, simple approach is to build up a file to prepare these datasets and reference those for foreign keys. The second approach is to generate the tables in a single bundle, and mentioning that your foreign keys will reference values from another table and column, as you can see here. For this last feature, instead of focusing on a single table generation, we can close the table dialog and go to the Synthetic Data Manager that will allow to generate tables altogether. By changing the sequence of creation, or by asking DbJ to automatically discover the dependencies, you will ensure that your tables will be created in an order to not break the referential integrity if it is enforced by your data platform. This was a quick introduction to synthetic data generation in DbJ. I hope you enjoyed the simplicity of the tool, and will see value in using it. Tool is free to download from jackapps.org. Don't hesitate to check out other tools like Carpenter for Parquet files preparation, S3 Manager for managing your S3 buckets on Amazon, and Carcep for CSV files profiling and processing. Thanks a lot for watching.